A House resolution recognizing the well-being of all Minnesota children. Whereas research over the last 2 decades in the evolving field of neuroscience, molecular biology, public health, genomics, and epigenetics reveals that experiences in the first few years of life build changes into the biology of the human body that, in turn, influence the person's physical and mental health over the person's lifetime. And whereas these early experiences literally shape the physical agriculture of a child's developing brain and establish either a sturdy or a fragile foundation for all the learning, health, and behavior that follows. And I would like to yield to Representative Kresha.
Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas strong, frequent, or prolonged stress in childhood caused by adverse childhood experiences can become toxic stress, impacting the development of a child's fundamental brain architecture and stress response systems. And whereas the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, ACEs, data corroborates the neurobiology of childhood development, showing specific correlations between 10 categories of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction, and consistent increased risk of disease and negative health behaviors in adulthood. And I'll yield to Representative Kahn.
Representative Kahn.
Whereas the Minnesota Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, BRFSS, conducted by the Minnesota Department of Health in 2011, found that 60% of Minnesotans surveyed had 2 or more ACEs, and 15% had 5 or more ACEs before the age of 18. And whereas the 213 Minnesota student survey data indicate that 35% of Minnesota students grades 7 through 12 reported at least one adverse childhood experience. And I would now like to yield to Representative Winkler.
Representative Winkler.
Whereas BRFSS data also show that in Minnesota, American Indian and African American adults had a significantly higher percent of individuals reporting 5 or more ACEs as compared to white adults. And whereas the Minnesota Department of Human Services 2013 Child Welfare Report states that American Indian, African American, and children of 2 or more races are respectively 15.5, 4.0, and 4.0 times more likely than white children to be placed out of home. And I would like to yield to Representative Miller.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas early childhood offers a unique window of opportunity to prevent and heal the impacts of adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress on a child's brain and body, and whereas positively influencing the architecture of a child's developing brain is more effective and less costly than attempting to correct poor learning, health, and behaviors later in life, and I would like to yield to Representative Ward.
Representative Ward. Representative Laine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whereas a child's brain continues to develop through adolescent and into young adulthood, and whereas the emerging science and research on toxic stress and adverse child experiences demonstrate a growing public health crisis for the state with implications for the state's educational, juvenile justice, criminal justice, and public health systems, and I would like to yield to Representative Ward.
Representative Ward.
Whereas a critical factor in buffering children from the effects of toxic stress and adverse childhood experiences is the existence of supportive, stable relationships between children and their families, caregivers, and other important adults in their lives. And whereas evidence shows that parent knowledge and understanding of childhood development can encourage positive parenting skills, support healthy cognitive and social development in children, and prevent and reduce incidences of abuse and neglect. Now, therefore, and I'd like to yield to Representative Moran.
Representative Moran.
Be it resolved by the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration of the House of Representatives of the State of Minnesota that the principles of brain development, the connections between mental and physical health, the concept of toxic stress, adverse childhood experiences, buffering relationships, and the roles of early intervention and investment in children are important strategies for the well-being of all Minnesota children. Mr. Speaker, I would like as a body, as we break for the Easter holiday, that I would like for us to take this information with us so that we become more of an informed body of people here who are making decisions that are impacting children, families, and community, that we take this information and that we learn from this information, that we make decisions based on the information that are put before us around neuroscience and the ACEs. And our hope, and the hope of many of the advocates who are working strongly to prevent abuse and neglect of children, is that we can become better decision makers as we are creating laws and policies that are impacting children's families and communities. So I just want to thank this body for listening. Happy Easter, and be well. Thank you.